Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
Welcome back to my discussion with physician-turned-entrepreneur Dr. Merlynn Carson, the CEO of Myriddian, a health IT consulting firm that integrates data, healthcare, and workforce solutions for better patient outcomes. Merlynn, a running theme of this podcast has been the importance of not only strong partnerships in business, but also in life. And your husband, Benjamin Carson Jr., has been a guest on my podcast, and he talked about what a big part you've played in his success. But is it true that he invested in your company when you were still dating?
Yes, he did invest while we were dating, and I tell him, I'm like, that was a risk, right? Because I wasn't tied to this guy, and I wasn't really sure I wanted to marry him at that time either. No, Ben is he's an amazing guy, and I'll be honest. When in that career path of medicine, medicine's a very secure field, and coming from my cultural background, I'm an immigrant, I'm Indian, and a lot of us tend to be in medicine or engineering. It wasn't easy for me to make that transition. When I was looking at exploring other opportunities, I kept telling myself I could do this better. I prefer to I feel like there are challenges in healthcare that I can solve for. And I would have these conversations with Ben about it, and he's just like, well, why do you keep talking about it? Why don't you just do it? And it was like, well, because I wasn't ready to take that risk. And if Ben wasn't the one kind of pushing me into that, I think it's good for you to take that risk. I might not have done that. And I'll be completely transparent. I think as women, we tend to be in our safe zones, and we tend to take the secure role. And my security would have been being in that path of clinical medicine. And then maybe I would have been in that burnout section too, Dave, and then, realize there are other career paths. But Ben really did foster that entrepreneurship. He's just like, I think you can do it. I think you have that, and then he invested. He was putting money into it as well. So I was young enough. So I said, okay, I'm going to jump into this and see what happens. So I give a lot of credit to where I am, because now, at that time, my boyfriend, now my husband, was a very big factor in that.
Ben has affectionately referred to you as his retirement plan and calls you extraordinary in every regard, the best thing that ever happened to him. How has he been helpful?
Oh, I know. He makes that joke all the time, and I love him for it. But Ben has been super helpful in not just the advising side of it. As you know, his background is in finance, so he's been very good about helping gear the company towards how do I set it up correctly? How do I make sure when I was doing transactions, like I bought a smaller company, being involved in helping me guide that through. But he also has a great network of people that he's connected me with as well. And he's really been my support when, there are times I'm just like, oh my gosh, I thought about it. I'm like, how did I, especially early on, was I doing the right thing by leaving medicine? Maybe I would have, I would have saved somebody. It was one of those things. And Ben was always, he's just like, no, stay your course and figure this out. So he's been a rock on my side. And like I said, I don't think I would have taken this path this early on without Ben.
Thanks for sharing. What is the most unexpected opportunity that arose that you didn't really think that people were interested in getting advice on a certain sector, and all of a sudden you're getting calls and referrals on a certain sector? Have you had any of those calls? Have you had any of those type of discussions?
I have, and it's interesting because I had just kind of founded the company. We were, getting our feet wet, and we had landed this large client of ours, and we were working through that, and I had got a call when the electronic health records decided to come into the DC area, when this, large electronic health record company was coming in, and the DOD and VA were trying to get together and try to fix and put in an electronic health record system in there. I had got a call as, hey, can you talk to us about this? Can you help us, try to figure this out, and advisory. And at that time I was I was thrilled because this was such a big, I mean, this is a huge undertaking that was happening. And little old me with my small company and just kind of founded it with, right now, maybe there's like 3 employees at that point, was being called as for my expertise. That was a pretty big deal. And I'm glad to see that we actually are working with one of the companies right now as the electronic health records is, integrating into kind of the government agency. So that was years back. So that was a pretty big deal for our company.
Thanks for sharing. I know you're on a mission to help other women and minorities succeed in business. What's your top priority when it comes to assisting them?
I think it's, and I alluded to this before. I find that as women, and especially if you're a minority woman, we just don't take the risks, and being that, entrepreneurial mindset and focusing on things like STEM. And when we come out of schools or like this graduate degrees, we tend to take a position, we get comfortable, and we stay there. And I love it when I see entrepreneurial women out there and they're starting up their business. I'm very open to giving lessons learned that I've learned, any advice that I can provide or any support I can work with them, if I can provide them in terms of bringing them into a project to give them experience, I'm very open to that. In fact, I'm actually looking right now at, protegeing a company, finding a women-owned company that I can protege to help them in their growth. I did look for that when I started up my company. I did look for that, but there weren't that many women-owned companies out there. And if there were, they're very closed. And I just feel like as women, I feel like women should help other women. That's where I am, and that's what I want to do. And so right now I'm looking for a good women-owned company, kind of falls into the healthcare category that I can help.
You said, I really want to put people back to work. I'll go out of my way to make the connection. Where does the drive come from to connect and help people? And why does giving back matter to you?
I think it's very important to have a good network of people. And I think it's important, as an immigrant, hard work has been always instilled in us. And that's one of the reasons why I always tell people, like, there's no job that's like too low. Just take, if it's a foot in the door, get your foot in the door and work yourself up. So I'm very big on, helping people get into positions, and I've done that. And you never know what happens with that position. Again, it's the same thing with the network. You make a connection, and, I believe in karma, so it'll come back. And if it doesn't, great. I just made a great friend. I think it's important to give back. And I also mentioned that I wish I had more of those mentorship type of, when I enter the market, that I could have relied on. So I made it a point to say, my company takes off and my company grows to where I want it to be, I want to give back, because there are women out there that should be encouraged to be in this business world. And I want to make sure that I can help foster that. We need more women in business. So that's important to me.
Who influenced you the most in the world of healthcare? And who has been your biggest influence in entrepreneurship?
I look at it in terms of, from an entrepreneurship, I see, I'll be honest, it's my mom. Now, we take so much for granted in America. Like, we're immigrants, we came from India. My mom came from, she came from a well-to-do family in India, but she came to a different country and she started up an assisted living, and she grew that and made sure, and I saw the hard work that she put into it, and her trade was teacher, and she kind of went out of her norm. And so that was my first, insight into entrepreneurship. So it's kind of a family rooted thing, we say. And that's the focus. Like, I saw that hard work and what she built around it. And I think that really helped me in focusing and kind of what I needed to do to be an entrepreneur. And then, of course, Ben was, a huge factor in how I've grown and kind of helping me in my focus and helping me with the company. And I will say, there right now, I have advisories. I've created an advisory board of powerful women, and I like to see these, some women, some of these women they're rock stars, and they are such great advisors, and I look up to them as my mentors. And one such I'll mention is one of my advisors is Dr. Raquel Bono. She was the Defense Health Secretary. I think she just stepped down like 2 years ago. Now, she's a physician by trade. She's an immigrant, and she is a phenomenal person who I go to for advice. So I think it's really important to have a strong foundation in people that you can look up to, your influence, and also building a good advisory board or some people that you can turn to.
I have to ask you, what's the single best piece of advice you've ever received?
It's to not question myself. I tend to be very and I think, again, I go back to women. Women tend to be very critical of themselves, and I think it's important that we kind of take a step back and we say, you know what, here's our pros and cons, and what is the worst and best case scenario, and just move forward. And I think that's very important. And let self-doubt not be the crippling factor in your success. And I think that is very important for, I would say for anybody, but women specifically.
As you're advising people that are coming up and considering really taking a risk and going on a different path and becoming the leader that you've become in this industry through really disruptive growth and sustainable business and consulting, what would you advise them?
I think just be honest in terms of how you do business. Create your processes and follow them. I think it's very important that you stay transparent and stay true to yourself. There are people that take projects, and I saw this entering the market. People rely on the fact that they are a small business or a minority or they have this certification. No, your growth should be diversify your portfolio, grow based on transparency, and build those relationships. Not everything is going to work out, and not every product should be taken. If you can't do it, be open about it. And I think that is something that I've seen businesses do. And that was one of those lessons learned that I told myself, I will not do that. And I think that's really important, that as people focus on, and as they enter the market, not to just take anything. I've seen capability statement where companies can do everything under the sun. And I'm like, that's not possible. Focus on what is it that is your core capability? What is specific? What makes you stand out in the market among other people? And focus on that and go after opportunities like that.
You've had tremendous track record of success to come over here and be a physician and jump in and hit it strongly. You credit luck, but you've been really fabulously successful in focusing on this strength and addressing this pain point. What would you share to people that are decide between taking a risk and not taking a risk? And how would they judge, in your estimation, and really weigh it the proper way so they can be confident and happy the decision that they make?
And I think that comes down to, each person. I think I say luck, but I also had, I got lucky, but I also had a foundation, right? Because I went through school, I had an educational background, I had a foundation of, a background where I've seen what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So I did weigh out my risk. And I think that's important, to have a foundation. And, not every idea is a good idea. So I think people need to really kind of reflect on that. I've heard a lot of different types of ideas, and it's just really focus on how does your idea impact the community or the society, or how does your impact, solve for a challenge, and focus on that and talk to people to get some advice around, does this make sense? There are a lot of people out there that just want to launch products just because they can launch a product. They're going to create a product, but how does that change things? And are there products out there? Do your research. And I think that's important. And, and it comes down to individual. I think it's important to take risks, but, you don't just jump in with a bad idea. And that's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay. No, That's really good. And in summary, you're saying that you've been extremely successful and will continue to be really successful, and that you were very careful in the way you went about things, and that people should take calculated risks. And certainly I understand that. And most of all, Merlynn, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing this information with us. And I know my audience is going to be absolutely delighted as well.
Well, thank you so much, Dave. This was great. And I loved being on here. I hope, some of what I had to impart, help somebody else. And I encourage other women that are out there that are considering, to look at entrepreneurship as an avenue.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book, Principles of Cartel Disruption, Accelerate and Maximize Performance, is now available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.